It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. From Fantha Tracks TV, this is Good Morning Tatooine!
Good morning, Tatooine. It's the 29th of January, and we're back with your weekly recap of all the Star Wars news from this past week. So, what have we got in store for you tonight? So, first up, we're talking Alden, talking about the future of Han Solo, and we're going to be looking at Star Wars Celebration Europe. The first guests have been announced. CANTINA 2, Fantha Tracks will be hosting the VIP after party. The Sail Barge to Celebrations happening. A few of the fan groups are coming together to organise that. Gentle Giant are releasing a Star Wars 000 jumbo figure. We'll be checking that out. ILM have been doing great guns in the nominations. In award season, 18 nominations at the 21st Visual Effects Society Awards. Lucas Museum is building towards a 2025 opening. We'll be discussing that. The High Republic Adventures is going to be part of Free Comic Book Day via Dark Horse Comics. And Arcade 1-Up have got their Anniversary Edition Star Wars Home Arcade game coming to the UK. So to discuss that and much, much more from fathertracks.com, joining me tonight, Mr. Andrew Walker. How are you, Andrew?
Good evening. I'm not so bad, thank you.
And how's your week been? And what's your current thoughts on the state of Star Wars? We've got Bad Batch on Disney Plus at the moment. Are you watching that?
Do you know what? I'm not watching it at all because, much to my shame, I still haven't watched the Clone Wars.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
I'm on about the second series of Clone Wars. Well, I'm trying to work my way through it, but the problem is that now with so many streaming services offering so many things, there's always something new comes up and I keep getting distracted from it. And I don't want to watch Bad Batch until I've seen that. Yeah. So probably in about 16 years, I'll finally get around to it.
I think everyone knows my taste on animation. It's just not my thing. I can't get into it. I'm still struggling to get past I think it's the very first episode of Clone Wars is like Yoda based. And I think I've tried watching it about 3 or 4 times. I just can't get through it.
I mean, it's one of those things that the start of it was not really the best ever, if I'm being honest. But from what I've heard, it improves as it goes along.
Everyone tells me to persevere, but I haven't managed that as yet.
But it's whenever you've got to like battle through the first season or season and a half, you don't really want to, sort of thing. You want to get in and go, yes.
First up on the news this week is a film that I really enjoyed, but apparently not so many other people did because the box office was very poor. But Solo, it's always kind of on the cusp of people wanting more Solo content, and should it be on Disney Plus? Should it be another film? It kind of feels it's the one that's never going to get through a boardroom because they're going to look at the money taken on the first outing of Solo. But Han Solo, or young Han Solo himself, Alden's been speaking this past week, and he's kind of wants to do more Solo because I think he kind of suggests that he didn't get to be the real Han Solo towards the end of the episode, or end of the film rather, and that was the character that would be most fun to be, is to be sort of that real Han Solo character, and I think he's comes across as being quite keen to do that. Would you like to see more of young Han?
Do you know what? I'd love to see more. I'm the same as you. I really liked the first film. I think it took a while to get into its stride, and I think it's become a bit of a sort of a bit more of sort of a cult hit, really, than it wasn't the immediate Star Wars. Wow, let's love this! It's amazing. I liked it from the beginning, but lots of people really, really didn't. But I think Disney didn't help themselves on this one because they spent the whole time before they got rid of the original, the original directors, and very publicly were going, we don't really think this is going to be any good.
Yeah.
So of course people didn't go and see it then.
Yeah.
If the people making the film were saying this is a bit crap, you're not going to bother going to see it. But I think he did a really good job filling. You've got to fill Harrison Ford's boots, which is not exactly easy, is it?
No.
But I think he got the right sort of. He's got the sort of Han Solo swagger, and generally did a really good job. There was a few things I would have changed with the film. I think it got a bit too complicated, too many twists and turns and whatever. But all in all, I really enjoyed it, and I'd love to see more. Whether it become a film or a series, I don't really have any massive opinion on.
Yeah, I think they ended up spending so much extra bringing in the new director and trying to fix what they saw as flaws. We'll never know because we never saw who made what, really. But then they didn't put anything towards the marketing, and then you kind of add on the backlash from the sequel trilogy that it was kind of in the midst of at the time. I think it kind of became a film that people either were unaware of or didn't want to go to out almost like a protest. It didn't really matter what that individual film's quality was going to be. It just wasn't going to happen for it. So it kind of got punished that way.
Yeah, but if you also look, if you even look at Rogue One, Rogue One's after Empire Strikes Back is my favorite of all the Star Wars films. I absolutely loved Rogue One. And it was the same there. They brought people in to polish it off a bit, sort of thing, after Gareth Edwards was done with it. And if they're making changes later on, if it's little tweaks, then that'll be okay. But if they're making major changes, then it's just it doesn't feel like it's going to work. But like I say, I liked I really liked some of the characters. I like I love the introduction to Chewie, being a costume guy. Some of the new troopers that turned up in it were excellent. I'd love to do a couple of them, but as with everything else, it comes down to the cash.
Yeah, I think the other factor that always kind of exists for me, and with that most respect to the actors, they're actors that would be affordable for a TV series. So you could take any one of the sort of main actors in Solo, and you could argue the fact that you could have a TV series round about them. So I think this is never going to go away. It's always going to be there that people are going to want it until it gets to a point where they're too old to play young versions of the characters again.
Yeah, but I think as well it could be there's the risk of it sort of going on a bit too long, and then if it's not good, there will be a real "oh well, we told you so."
Yeah.
Rather than there's a lot of that. What Star Wars fans are like. They love to hate Star Wars, but there's too many people are willing to slap it down a bit too much, and I just get a bit tired of it, to be honest.
Yeah. Up next, we've got news on Star Wars Celebration. First guests have been announced. We may get announcements regarding future TV shows at Celebration, of course. But first guests have been announced. Amongst them, Anthony Daniels, Ashley Eckstein, Matt Lanter, D. Bradley Baker. Literally the first four guests kind of like really fit to my Star Wars in droids and animated characters. But we had those guys announced, and we also had from the TV world Giancarlo Esposito, Vivian Lyla Blair, and Indira Varma as well. Obviously from The Mandalorian and Obi-Wan limited series. Are you excited from the first batch, I guess, announced? Many of them won't have signed at a Star Wars convention in Europe before. I
know, and it's killing me. I had promised myself that I wasn't going to buy any autographs this time around, and then they announced that Giancarlo Esposito was going to be there, and I would love to get his autograph on my poster.
Yeah.
so I think I might have to break my rules. I really like that they've got, they've got some of the old classics. You've got Anthony Daniels; he's going to turn up at everything, and some of the other ones. But I like that they are putting in some of the new people as well. I'm interested to see. This is obviously not going to be everybody. There's going to be a load more, and you'll have a bunch of sort of side characters, and whatever. I'm interested to see what other of the main characters they pull in. I was thinking about it today. I mean, like, of course, there's always. I'm always going to have my dream of meeting Harrison Ford one day, but let's face it, it's never going to happen unless somebody happens to have his phone number, in which case, pass it on. But I'm thinking, I would love it if Ewan McGregor hinted at Celebration last year. Last year it was in LA, that he might be here, and I would love, being a Northern Ireland boy, I would love to meet Liam Neeson.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. I'm kind of interested in obviously Anders going to be filming at the time Celebration's on in London. The Acolyte's currently filming. I think it will still be filming by the time Celebration comes round. I would like to think that certainly they'll be amongst the guests doing panels at Celebration. Not so sure if they'll have some of them signing, maybe especially the Acolyte guys, because they'll be nervous about someone saying something maybe. They would be great guests to have, and accessible and local.
Oh, after the bombshell they dropped at Celebration in Germany, when they revealed a big plot part of Rogue One. Yeah. I guess they're going to be very, very careful.
Absolutely. Also happening at Celebration, Fantha tracks are going to be involved in a couple of things. CANTINA 2's happening. Anyone that was in the last Celebration in London will remember CANTINA. It was kind of a global social star of the show, really. It took the social media by storm a little bit, and it's returning for CANTINA 2. And Fantha tracks are going to be hosting the VIP after show party, and the DJ set by Atomic Blonde DJ. As well, if you're familiar with her, you can check her out on our website, atomicblondedj.com. Great show last time round. I know a lot of people will be keen to go there again. If they want to scan the QR code right in the middle of the screen there, they can buy their VIP tickets. I'm reliably informed that Mark Newbold and Matt Booker will be there, and they'll buy the first round.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And the second and the third.
Yeah. Great event. Is it an event you're going to be able to get to yourself, or are you already committed with so many of the different events happening in the evenings during Celebration?
Well, this time around I'm bringing my family with me, so I have to keep it a bit calmer than normal, but this one I'm going to. We were sort of humming and hawing about it a bit, and then I talked to Claire, who's my partner in crime for Celebration. So, what about this thing? She, I've already bought you a ticket. Okay, then so I'll be going to that, will I? So we're all trumping along to that, but then missing the 501st bash that I would normally go to, being a member there and whatever. Just decided the last time around it wasn't great, and I've heard a lot of good things about Cantina last time, so I'm really looking forward to that. It'll be good fun.
There's
the best part about Celebration is all the parties afterwards, to be honest. It's just
Mark's not bringing his ID, so they won't serve him. What an excuse. Terrible.
He's so young looking. Probably not get through the door.
Yeah, and obviously you've got Boot Night Eve before Celebration even starts on the Thursday. Return of the Bash, which is the 501st event on the Friday. Cantina as well. On the Sunday, so that's like 3 of the dates, which left kind of Saturday evening free for some people. So a few of the clubs that are involved in Celebration have grouped together: Dark Empire, Fantha Tracks, Mando, Mercs, Rebel Legion, Saber Guild, and are organising a sail barge to Celebration, so like a boat experience, a 4-hour river cruise down London Thames. Cost $47.50. Tickets will be on sale very soon to members of those groups. It's a group only event, something different, a little bit of fun for Celebration, a chance for people as well to see in some of the sights of London by night as well. So Fantha Tracks will also be involved in that one, and I'll be there. That's a definite one for me. I think I'll be enjoying that one. I think, and can't make to all the evening events, but that one's I'm going to.
I think it'll be
Bibs Bash as well. Mark's telling me in the comments. I did see that as well on the Saturday. Another event. There's events everywhere to do around celebration, which is part of the fun. It's the social element of celebration.
Well, so that's what I think. Honestly, is the most fun, especially because when you've been to quite a few of them, like I have now, and I'm sure you guys have as well. There's a lot of repetition. There's always Anthony Daniels doing his everybody look at me show, and he's always funny and everything. But you've heard all the stories, and Mark Hamill going, "We're all family," and you get a lot of the same thing happening again. But all it's always worth it.
Little love heart.
But the parties afterwards and stuff, you bump into people who you wouldn't, like mates who you hadn't expected to see, and people who were in the films. So I remember before the first celebration in London, we were sitting outside in the pub the day before it started, and two guys came over and said, "Is it okay if we sit with you?" And yeah, sure, no problem. Sit down and have a chat. And we thought there were other 501st guys. We all had our 501st t-shirts on, and it ended up being Richard LaParmentier and Angus McGuinness, I think he's called, who played Gold Leader.
Yep, that's it. Yeah.
And they sat and were telling us all these stories about the recordings and when this happened and when that happened, and signing autographs for everybody and buying drinks all around. It was absolute gas.
I think that's part of the fun of celebration, is that you don't actually necessarily have to go to the events, just hanging around the show, hanging about the hotel lobby, and you can meet and have great laugh with people, get to know people you only really know from behind the sort of wall of social media, or, as you say, bump into people who were actually involved in the making of the films.
Yeah, no, in Essen, I'd really wanted to get to meet Ian McCaig, and he'd done an art session, and I tried to sort of grab him afterwards to get a swift autograph of him, and it didn't work. It was just he was whipped off stage and away. Then walked into the pub 10 minutes later, and he sat there having a pint. No, excuse me.
Perfect. Next on the news front, we've got product release. 000, a jumbo edition, 12-inch jumbo figure, coming from Gentle Giant. It's going to retail for $80 and available US, Canada, all around Europe, Japan, South Korea, Brazil, Mexico, even Russia. Controversial. And it's arriving in the third quarter of 2023. I'm not a fan of droids, full stop, but I do like the character of 000 from the Marvel comics, mostly featured in the Dr. Aphra series. Are you a collector of any of the toys at all, or is it something that you successfully managed to avoid?
God's sake, you can't avoid buying stuff. I used to. So when I was a kid, I had near enough all the figures, all the original ones, and then my parents gave them all away when I was about 11 years old. So I nearly murdered them. Only found out about 15 years later. So now and then I bought a whole load, and then I had to cut back because they were taking it from house. So got like a few sort of select ones, if you like, on some shelves. But I'm not a massive fan of the new the retro series. They're trying to copy the style of the original figures, and I think it just feels like, oh well, we've already done 17 versions of Luke Skywalker in his Tatooine costume. Here's another one that we can sell. I think they're overdoing it basically.
Yeah. Definitely, there's so much out there, it's insane. Next up in the news front, ILM have grabbed 18 nominations at the 21st Visual Effects Society Awards, and pretty amazing array of projects they've been involved in. Just some of them listed: Andor, Boba Fett, the Galactic Star Cruiser, just to name some of the Star Wars projects they're getting nominations for, but also involved in Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans, The Pale Blue Eye, Lord of the Rings on Prime, the ABBA Voyage, which is happening just along the road from the Excel Centre at Star Wars Celebration. I think it's still on during Star Wars Celebration if people want to buy tickets to ABBA Voyage. It's kind of like a virtual reality ABBA concert. Guardians of the Galaxy, Cosmic Rewind, and Black Panther as well, just to name a few. Pretty amazing array of nominations and work from ILM, and ILM probably goes as the biggest success, I think, in legacy from George Lucas out of anything. I think, everyone is always going to look at Star Wars and Indiana Jones, but in terms of what's changed the face of film, I don't think there's any company that's achieved that more than ILM has.
No, I watched the Light and Magic documentary on Disney Plus. I think it was just before Christmas I watched it, and the amount of stuff they've done is just mental. And the amount of things where, like we all have heard the stories from Star Wars when they go, oh yes, and we're going to do a gigantic planet-sized space station, and they'll go, how are we going to do that? Don't really know, but it'll be fine in the end. And you hear that a lot about Star Wars. You don't hear about it in all the other things that they're still doing now. You think now they're kind of, oh yeah, no problem, we'll just knock that out and it's fine. But they're still constantly, pushing the bubble and pushing themselves more than anything else, and coming up with new stuff and finding mad ways to do stuff. I was watching the films that made us yesterday. About aliens, and like showing, the one of the corridors they did that put styrofoam burger boxes all the way down the corridor, stuck on the walls and stuff, just to make it look a bit more sci-fi and whatever. It's just like, where do you come up with that?
I always think Star Wars is at its best when ILM is doing something new and innovative, and they're really pushing the boundaries. And I think that's kind of why I've enjoyed the prequels and the original trilogy more than the sequels. It kind of felt that the sequels didn't have to push technology as much, and then we've kind of evolved into the TV world and actually had to push the technology really far on that to make that commercially viable for them. So it kind of feels like a little bit that the sequel trilogy missed out a little bit. I'm sure that the people at ILM will correct me as to terms the amazing work that they did on that and new technologies and so on.
Well, it's also the kind of thing like whenever you're not seeing what they've done, that's when they've done it really well. Like in the prequels, it was kind of easy to pick out. Like if you look, the big battle on Naboo between the Gungans and the droids and stuff, it looks very computer generated. Now, for the time, it was absolutely amazing. I remember downloading the trailer the day that it came out, but oh my god! But now it's a bit But the stuff that they do that you never even realize, with the what do they call it, the volume, where they're making the TV series and stuff, and you don't even realize that it's not actually really there, sort of thing. It's just a massive TV screen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think nobody really knew about the volume until I think we were at least halfway through the first series before people started talking about the technology being used in The Mandalorian. So nobody really knew how they were doing it, to be perfectly honest.
You pick up on it quite quickly because you see there's a lot of things where they go, right, they'll be back later, and they turn away and they take like 3 steps and they cut before they walk into the wall, sort of thing. Yeah. So they can't do sort of long shots and stuff that you could do if you're actually out in the desert and whatever. But it still looks so absolutely amazing that that's okay by me.
Yeah. Talking about ILM and George Lucas's legacy somewhat, coming in 2025 will be the Lucas Museum. It was scheduled to open this year, but it's been pushed back to 2025 due to issues to do with COVID and delays in the ability to get building products and so on. But they released this past week a video of the progress they've made in building it, and the photo you can kind of see there that they've made a huge progress. You can see the solar panels on the roof there, and Exposition Park is being really developed in LA, and it's really changing the landscape there, and it's going to bring a whole new opportunities to that part of the city. I'm actually really excited to go and see George Lucas's museum, if for no other reason than to see what kind of art he's collected and what inspired him. Because often what inspires me has been the art that he's created, and I kind of want to see what he enjoys and what he's inspired. And I know he's a big comic collector and art collector, a bit like myself. So I would like to see some of that as well. Is it a location you can see yourself wanting to visit?
Absolutely. I mean, to be honest, we haven't heard anything about it for so long that I thought it had been abandoned. And then suddenly, here we go. It's all it's well on the way, sort of thing. I'm absolutely loving the look of it. And I think it was, I know there was a lot of discussion about where it was going to be. If it was going to be in San Francisco, and then it was going to be in Chicago, and then it was going to be in LA, and it wasn't, and it was. I think LA is a better place for them to have it because people will go there anyway, sort of thing. So if you're already there, then we'll go and see that. Whereas other places you might have had to have made a specific trip, and you might not have gone that far. But it's going to be. It's going to be pretty amazing to see what all it can fit in there.
Yeah, 5 stories, 300,000 square feet. It's going to be a big museum, and I can imagine it housing a lot more than just George's collection. I imagine there's going to be a lot of people. I can actually see it becoming a hub for sort of his generation of directors and their collections, and almost being a celebration of that era of filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, they could put anything into it basically, and make it interesting with with the amount of resources they've got to pull on there. And it's like most things, you don't, even if you're not particularly interested in whichever aspect of it, they might be pushing the most, as long as it's presented well in an interesting manner, anything can be interesting. So I think it should be really, really good, and I'll definitely be aiming to go and see it.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see if Lucasfilm get involved in it at all, whether they'll allow any of the collection that remained with them after the sale to form even a section or part of the museum, or where George is going to stick to what he owns and what he has as part of his own personal kind of archive.
Yeah, I mean, I know George Lucas has made a few comments about the new films and things, saying that he doesn't really like them and it's not his Star Wars and whatever. But in the end, he is the brains behind the whole thing, sort of thing. And it would be a bit sad if they didn't, get on board with it and help out with whichever stuff they've got available, basically. But I'm sure it'll all work itself out in the end. If nothing else, somebody will wave a big check around.
Yeah. Coming very soon, before the museum, but after Star Wars Celebration is Free Comic Book Day. Dark Horse Comics are going to be releasing a High Republic's Adventures comic, along with Avatar: The Last Airbender, coming May the 6th, 2023. The High Republic's been a huge part of Star Wars publishing in the last couple of years. I think people are either hugely into it or have managed to completely avoid it at all. Kind of what category do you fall into?
I'm more in the second. I bought the first book and started reading it, and it didn't really grab me straight away. And I've been meaning to go back and give it another go, because like all the what do they call it now? Is it called the Legacy? They call the old books.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved all them. I mean, I had every single one. I thought sort of my Star Wars book collection was like 40 or 50 books. And then I took them all to tidy up one day and realized there's about 250 of them. And I would really, really like to get into this. But I've got to, basically I've got to make a bit of an effort. It's a bit like the Clone Wars I was talking about before. I've just got to bite the bullet and get on with it. But it's always harder to get into things whenever it's like a completely different era. It was the same, with the Old Republic game and stuff. It didn't quite catch me as much as some of the other Star Wars games have done, because it's not the era we're used to dealing with, and it's the same thing here. We'll I'll have to give it another try, basically. And then the comics I read avidly as a kid, but there's too blooming many of them now to keep up with. They're coming out constantly. I'll be having them remortgage my house.
I think that's the fairest criticism you can give the High Republic as well, in terms of it's a new era, so it's all new characters, and I think they overcomplicated the names, so it's hard to recall who's who. Plus,
well, I had that exact same thing. I had exactly that with Andor.
Yeah.
I didn't latch on to any of the characters really because they kind of go, and that's Dave, and that's Billy, and that's Jimmy, and that's it, sort of thing. They need to sort of repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat.
Yeah.
So you get okay, so she's called that and he's called that and whatever. Otherwise, you don't attach to them quite as much. It was easy to get on board with Mon Mothma, and then sort of the people around her, fine, but you didn't really know who they were. And the same with Andor and the people around him. So it's the same kind of feeling with this thing. You've got to get into it, and it was the same obviously with Star Wars right in the beginning. You had no idea who Han Solo was.
Yeah.
But 40 odd years later,
the sheer volume of releases in terms of number of books and number of comics and that, it's a little bit overwhelming. So I think if you weren't involved from the start, it's quite an easy one to let's not got sucked into that kind of storytelling there. But it'll be interesting what happens with the Acolyte TV series, because it's going to be set in the High Republic era, at the tail end of that era. Because they're going to have to make that in a way that makes it completely accessible to everyone. And so I wonder if it's going to maybe politely refer to events within the High Republic publishing program, but not take any real significance from the publishing program, I think was probably the sensible approach.
Well, it's also when I think it makes it easier for them as well, because they don't have to be too careful about exactly what we say where, and because then people jump on it and but that contradicts page 27 of this book, sort of thing. But I think it's good whenever they do throw in a little bit for the people who know more, sort of thing. You don't have to go overboard. You don't have to have like a big sign going, fan content here, but you can just sort of say, and then I'm trying to think of an example and can't think of one now. But anything that sort of like in the Mandalorian, they had the cocaine monkey lizards getting barbecued and stuff, and my wife nearly cried when she saw that.
It's terrible, isn't it? It's shocking, terrible. Poor things. Last news story of the week. Arcade 1UP have got their Star Wars home arcade game now available to people in the UK. Both Game and Liberty Games are going to be stocking the cabinets, retailing at $699.99. Expensive and takes up a lot of space, but you get 3 games for the price of 1. Bargain. Not something for me, but I know a number of people want to pick up this for their game. I'm more happy for like a CD in a little box that can go in the PlayStation sat just under the TV. I don't
a CD in a little box. You're showing your age now. But this one is right up my street. So it is. I mean, hint. I'm turning 50 in a couple of months. Yeah. Anybody? But I mean, I remember they had the original game back in whenever it came out. It must have been in the 80s sometime, I guess, the original one, in our local supermarket. It was like a full sit-in cabinet. You came like the whole way around you, and we would sit in it, even if we didn't have 10p to play the game. But we'd just sit in it, playing with the controls and pretend to shoot down TIE fighters for hours at a time. I absolutely worshipped that game when I was a wee kid, and I'd love to have it again.
I think the last game I can remember, Star Wars game I can remember at an arcade, and I could be completely wrong, but I'm sure it was pod racing round about Phantom Menace. Kind of feels like there's like
one. Actually, I haven't been in an arcade for God knows how long. The last one I remember playing regularly was a Return of the Jedi one, and that was back like sort of mid '80s. So
yeah,
show me age.
If there's an arcade near me, it's going to be a travelling one, and you'll find me at the 2p machines.
A classic.
A classic. That is us recapped all of this week's Star Wars news. we are pretty much on the cusp, I think, of getting some exciting announcements from Celebration. We've got the first wave of guests this week. Kind of expecting that to continue each week from now on in. We touched briefly on the guests. Is there guests that you want to see at the show?
Like I say, my dream now, I mean, always has been, always will be, that Harrison Ford will come and actually sign stuff, but that's never going to happen. I was absolutely gutted that he turned up in I think it was in not in Anaheim, Orlando, and I wasn't there. But I would love to see some of the Mandalorian cast. I would absolutely give my right arm to meet Liam Neeson, and then for the panels and stuff. I'm actually looking more this time around. I'm thinking more of sort of like focusing on the slightly smaller ones, some of the sort of the more technical things and whatever. Because as I said before, we've all heard all the stories that most of the sort of the big stars of the films have. I'm kind of interested in seeing some of the smaller things, maybe.
Yeah.
But either way, I don't care. I'm going to have a laugh the whole time anyway.
Yeah, I always recommend people sort of do the smaller panels. And it annoys me because the last Celebration was the first one I haven't been able to attend in a long time, so I had to watch the live streams. And I was watching Doug Chang's live stream of his panel, and it was absolutely fascinating. And they cut away to Ewan McGregor on the Star Wars show stage telling you to hurry up and come and meet him and get your autographs. And it was like the most infuriating thing because it's the one thing I can't do. And I was really enjoying that panel. Come on, Ewan, get off the TV.
Oh, Doug Chang did one at one of the earlier Celebrations, and I was there the day before, I think it was, dressed as Darth Maul, and they got some, at his panel. They got somebody up on stage to draw with him, and they said they don't want, like, we don't want an artist. We want an absolute nobody to do this. And his first comment was, if there's anybody here as dressed as Darth Maul, I'll pick him. I was like, oh, come on, I'm 24 hours too late. Otherwise, I would have been on stage drawing Darth Maul with him. I was absolutely gutted. Would have loved to have done that. And I can't draw for pennies.
My hope is for a panel to do with Lucasfilm's film plans. I don't necessarily need something concrete. I just need to know that something's happening there. Because for me, there hasn't been a Star Wars film since Solo came out. And the sequel trilogy just passed me by. I can't watch it. It is unwatchable for me. And that'll always be the case, I think. And it's not for me. Other people enjoy it. Great. They can enjoy it. I can't.
Yeah.
And I'm not criticizing the filmmakers. It's just not my kind of content. So I desperately need a new Star Wars film. As much as I'm enjoying the TV content, there's nothing like going to the cinema to enjoy Star Wars.
No, that's it. It's one of those things that really does belong in a cinema. And I mean, I've been at the first showing of all the films since the special editions were released. Wherever I've been living, I've had my tickets booked, and like here in Sweden, we've been doing events around the premieres with the 501st and stuff. Been up on stage before the film we showed, presenting the film. People thinking we've already seen it and stuff because we're going, oh yes, and what you're going to see is blah blah blah, and we're just like, no, this is what I think we're going to see. But you've got to see them in the cinema.
Celebration.
Did Andy go to Celebration London 2016 as Maul? No, he didn't. I was done as Kylo Ren then. I would have been.
Okay. You'll be coming back over to the UK for Star Wars Celebration. I'll be there. Starting to look forward to it. The plans are starting to be made. Hopefully. And
I'm actually planning where I'm going to have a pint after.
Yeah, that's always the best part, is the social aspect. So I will buy anyone that watches this show that comes up and says they love the show, I will buy a pint. That's my commitment.
Well, hold you to
that. I think on that note, we should end the show for today. Andrew, thank you very much for joining me this week. It's been good to go over this week's Star Wars news. And Good Morning Tatooine will be back 9 o'clock in the UK, live next Sunday for all this coming week's Star Wars news, and we just don't know what that'll be at this point in time, but fingers crossed there'll be some exciting more guest announcements for Celebration. So, good night.
All right, thanks very much.
Keep up to date with the latest Star Wars news each and every day on FanthaTracks.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and Pinterest at Fantha Tracks. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow Fantha Tracks TV to be alerted to new content and to be a part of our live shows.